Okay, it is right at 4 o'clock. I'm going to give it a little bit of a slow start. Here is again some of our upcoming webinars hosted by Iowa Reading Research Center staff. Starting in October, we have one on students' literacy data. Specifically, we have some free resources related to when notes are being sent home from school. What does that data mean, and what are different ways that educators and parents can collaborate on that data? So Dr. Leo Zimmerman and colleagues will be presenting that in October. Another one with Heba and myself, and Dr. Matt Burns from UFly is going to be in November, and Dr. Seth King in December. So feel free to check out our website to learn some more about that. This one is evidence-based handwriting instruction and assessment. My name is Shawn Datchuk. My wonderful colleague Keller Young, who's on the call, who is completely outshining me in her wardrobe today, but that's okay. She usually does. We'll be talking today on evidence-based handwriting instruction and assessment. If you have a chance, pretty soon a poll is going to pop up that's going to ask, hey, how did you find out about us? Your name, email address, and then, hey, why don't you sort of let us know if you live in Iowa or not? So if you wouldn't mind filling that out, that would be greatly appreciated. Okay, so here's what we got going on today. So I'll do a brief introduction, talk to you a little bit about the Iowa Reading Research Center, and then it is the main course. So we'll be talking about the importance of handwriting skills, teaching handwriting, creating materials with our free evidence-based handwriting application called Literacy Lifter, using the Lifter instructional activities, and then finally assessing handwriting. We were thrilled that our team worked incredibly hard on coming up with some different handwriting assessments that pull directly from research that hopefully will make your lives a little easier. Again, my name is Shawn Datchuk. I'm the director of the Iowa Reading Research Center. I'm also a professor of special education at the University of Iowa. I'm a former K-12 special education teacher, and then also an elementary teacher. And I struggled quite a bit on teaching handwriting to students. I thought I definitely could not be alone. So I've spent my professional career looking at different writing interventions. And then to put Keller on the spot real quick, Keller, would you mind saying hello?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. I'm Keller Young. I'm an assistant research scientist here at the Iowa Reading Research Center. I am a former middle school language arts and social studies teacher. And although I get to do a lot of really incredible work here at the Iowa Reading Research Center, my particular research love really lies in teacher education and in writing instruction. So I'm really, really excited to get to be a part of the Lifter and Clifter family here at the Iowa Reading Research Center and continue to kind of build those resources out for everyone. So excited to share what we have with you guys today.
Okay, thank you, Keller. A quick word from where we're at, and we are housed in the University of Iowa, the Iowa Reading Research Center. We are a nonprofit free for Iowa, and we are thrilled to provide that services for Iowans. And then for those of you who are joining us from across the country, we do three things here. One is that we engage in research, so we try to understand how literacy develops, what works, what doesn't, and how we can help it develop successfully with kiddos. Then we engage in dissemination, so we create products such as Lifter based on research to disseminate across Iowa and the world. And then finally, we provide technical assistance to where we provide IRRC staffing to go and work with y'all on how can we implement that. If you're at all interested, please visit our website. I will drop this link in the chat real quick. Let's see. I'll do this. I'll do this. Drop this in the chat. Here we go. Additionally, feel free to contact us with your questions on handwriting instruction and assessment. This is email and live support that we can do online consultations for free for Iowans. And you can contact us by scanning that QR code or by going to our website. So as you're thinking about, perhaps in your mind's eye, you're thinking about a specific kiddo that you might have success with some of the things we're talking about today, you want some more support on figuring out how to do it, just contact us. And then finally, we have three upcoming webinars after today. We have one in October, November, and December. First one's on student literacy data. Second one is on class-wide intervention, or Tier 1.5. And then finally, what are different ways that we can structure fidelity walkthroughs that result in a positive experience for teachers and administrators? You can scan here to learn more, or just go to our website to sign up for those additional webinars. And then one last plug, I apologize. If what we are presenting to you find valuable, we are, again, a nonprofit center. And if you're interested in helping us engage in this level of research or outreach, please think about contributing or donating to us. And then you can get to there by scanning this QR code or perhaps visiting our website. Okay, so let's get to the meat and potatoes. Handwriting, put simply, plays an essential role in developing literacy. And literacy, I mean both reading and writing. So for writing, what we see is that handwriting, if we help kids become more proficient with handwriting, more fluent, they can not only write more, so write more words. What they write is judged to be of higher quality for organization or ideas, etc., by their peers, by their teachers. So handwriting plays a role in overall writing development. And then two, it also plays a close it has a close connection to reading. So numerous early literacy skills, including letter names, letter sounds, word reading. Put simply, is that as students learn that this sound k is connected to, so that sound, that phoneme is connected to a grapheme or a shape of k or a c or a k, that they are strengthening that connection between their reading and writing aspects or repertoires. So handwriting, and to get on the same page with everybody, what we mean when we say handwriting is, technical definition would be the use of a writing tool. So that could be crayon, marker, pen, pencil, etc. The use of a writing tool to transcribe letters of the alphabet. There are many different processes involved in handwriting. Three of them include orthographic coding. And this is the storage in students' memory, in our memory, of the alphabetic shape. So let's say the shape of the letter C, the name, the letter C, and then those are committed to memory. And then we also need visual motor coordination, to where students can look at the paper, look at perhaps the whiteboard, and manipulate not only their hand, their fine motor movement, but make adjustments, small adjustments of staying within the lines based off of what visual information they're picking up. And then finally, fine motor movement. So this would be precise movements of the body. And then overall, these processes of handwriting is writing individual alphabetic letters. These processes help contribute to that writing of individual letters. Handwriting overall fits within writing as a part of transcription. And so what is education? What is special education without a triangle graphic? So here's another triangle graphic on the simple view of writing, to where we can think about writing as these three larger blocks, to where we have transcription, text generation, executive functions, and then we also have working memory here in the middle. Let's unpack this real quick. So that first on that base would be transcription. And handwriting is a part of that. So transcription refers to the skills needed to handwrite or type individual letters and then transcribe those into whole spelling words. So transcription and handwriting, what we see is closely connected to this next part of the triangle, which would be text generation, this upper part. And that's where, when students can transcribe individual letters and words now into connected phrases, into sentences into paragraphs, and so on, this ability of students to generate this extended text is reliant upon transcription. So in other words, as students learn how to handwrite and spell with some fluency or automaticity, they can engage in greater text generation. And then finally, this last sort of larger bucket of writing would refer to executive functions. Sometimes this is also called self-regulation, but basically executive function self-regulations can be thought of as when we engage in writing, just ourselves as adults, educators, parents, caregivers, students as well, we tend to engage in three phases of writing, to where there's some planning, there's some writing, and then there's some revision. However, those phases don't just go in lockstep. So we just don't go, oh, let me plan, let me write, and then let me revise. We are constantly starting and stopping throughout. So perhaps some of you are quickly jotting off an email right now, or maybe you just did some emails right before you hopped on here. Chances are, when you sat down, you said, okay, what do I need this email to say? And then you started writing, and then you're stopping and starting, thinking through, is that the right word? I don't know about y'all. I am a chronic overuser of the exclamation point. So constantly when I'm writing, I have to go, oh, okay, wait a minute. My first three sentences start off with an exclamation mark. Does that seem kind of crazy? And then I have to kind of remove those, or then sometimes I'm like, oh, sarcasm doesn't play that well via email, and then I'm kind of changing. So even us as adults, educators, children, everybody's engaged in this executive function to where we are constantly starting and stopping, thinking about is what we originally planned, this is what we wrote, and then do we need to revise? And then all those aspects, transcription, text generation, and executive functions, are all competing for, unfortunately, the smaller amount of working memory that we all have within our brains. I wish I could sit here and then I wish this was the case with myself, that I could do everything all of the time, but that is not the case. We are constantly having to kind of put things online, take things offline, put our conscious attention to different aspects of what we're writing or whatever we're doing on the day to day, and then rely on some sort of automaticity with something to get us through. So I'd like you to think about, not to bring up anything too terribly stressful, but when you were first learning perhaps how to drive, maybe that first time you were on the highway to where you were white knuckling it and just kind of everything was heightened for you to where you're constantly having to think about everything that's going on. That would be exhausting if we had to do that. And we can't just extend that level of cognitive energy. Similar with writing, what we need to do is get fluent with some things to where then we don't have to actively, consciously put that in front of our attention. So, not to scare anybody, but when I drove home into my office today, I can't remember half the drive because thankfully I was fluent enough with the drive to where I can kind of think about some other things. Same thing with writing is that as students are more fluent or automatic with transcription, they won't have to kind of think through like, oh, wait a minute, is that how that's spelled? Or wait a minute, how does that letter M look? Because if they're focusing in on that, other juicy parts of why we want students to write, unfortunately, could kind of fly by the wayside. Is that it will elude them because, again, we can't do all of these things well all of the time by consciously attending to them. Okay, so if that's the importance of handwriting skills, is that it basically sets students up for not only writing benefits to where they can write more and then more clearly express their ideas, it also has these cognitive benefits of allowing them to free up cognitive resources to attend to these other very important parts of writing about how good are the ideas or how persuasive is it. So if handwriting skills are important, well, what do we know about the evidence base related to how to teach handwriting? Well, in a prior systematic review that I've done, and we are systematic reviews in the Iowa Reading Research Center are like this, two peas in a pod. We have numerous ones going on. Dr. Keller Young has too many to count right now, but basically one that we did before, we have three evidence-based practices that we have found in prior studies. One would be visual cues. Two would be cover, copy, compare. And then three is going to be explicit instruction. Let's unpack these a little bit. Visual cues refer to different things present in the environment that will help prompt students the correct letter formation. And when I say correct, it's more legible letter formation. So that can be dotted lines, so the shape, it could be an arrow to show the direction, and then finally a number to show the sequence. Now, this letter L isn't the most exciting because it's literally just a vertical line up and down, but this would be an example of all the different visual cues that can go into play. Two would be cover, copy, compare. So as I talked previously about the simple view of writing, we want to give students practice on committing these letter shapes into their long-term memory. One of the best ways of doing that is to give students practice memorizing the shape and having to pull it from their memory. So the cover, copy, compare is a structure on how they can do that or how you can help students do that. So here, students could see a model on, let's say here would be the letter L. They cover it, and then they try to copy it from memory. So in other words, they see it, they remove it from their sight. Now they need to pull it from their memory and then try to write it, and then they compare. Then they kind of check, okay, if that's what the letter L looks like, how close is mine? So this cover, copy, compare is really just a way of having a physical activity of memory retrieval or retrieving these letter shapes from memory. And then finally, explicit instruction. Explicit instruction has many definitions, many different components. Broadly speaking, it follows a iterative framework to where instructors model new skills and knowledge. They lead students through guided practice, and then they test for independent performance. So each instructional activity that you're going to see that we kind of baked into Literacy Lifter uses an explicit instruction where teachers model what to do, they lead students through guided practice, and then they test for independent performance. Okay, so if that's what we uncovered for, hey, what are 3 evidence-based practices for teaching handwriting? Oh, hey, if you do use these, there are all sorts of cognitive and writing benefits related to it because, again, in the simple view of writing in a triangle, it suggests that if students become more proficient with handwriting or transcription, it'll unlock these other aspects of writing. Let's get to the brass tacks, so to speak. So the rubber's going to meet the road here. So how do we create materials with the Literacy Lifter tool? If you haven't already done so, I'd strongly encourage you to check out our website. You can get to our website. Let me see. I'm going to try to log on to my website here. Hopefully you can see that. So if you go to our website, you can get to that through resources, apps, and tools. And then you have Lifter, and you click on that. And everything I say will be right here. There's an embarrassing video of myself. And then it'll be right over here. And then you can also scan the QR code to reach that. I'll just give you a second here if you wanted to scan that or visit that website. Okay. So Lifter. If you might be thinking, or you might have been thinking for the past couple of minutes, what does lifter mean? That is a great question. Lifter stands for kind of a mouthful here, so just bear with me. Lifter stands for letter identification. So here's a letter M, here's a letter N, here's a letter T, letter identification, and formation. So formation will refer to the shape that the letter would take when you're writing it. For transcription, so handwriting and spelling, and early reading. So Lifter, Literacy Lifter. So it can be used to improve student writing and then hopefully strengthen the connection between writing and reading. One of the key parts here is that it features an adaptable scope and sequence. I can't tell you how many teachers I've talked to over the years to where they say, okay, handwriting seems to be important, but my reading curriculum I really like, and it follows a set scope and sequence. So, perhaps it starts with the letter M and then goes to A and maybe S, starts with that. When I try to pull other handwriting resources to supplement it, the M, the A, and the S actually happen like in lesson 30. So it's actually way away from the beginning. We hear that. That can cause some confusion for students. So one of the key parts for Literacy Lifter is that it is completely flexible and adaptable to whatever curriculum you're using. So if you're using, let's say, CKLA or Foundations or Reading Mastery or whatever curriculum you're using that's following a set scope and sequence, you can go on our website and click specific letters that match your scope and sequence to create activities for handwriting that specifically align to your early reading curriculum. So before you get started, here are a couple of considerations. One, are students currently learning letters from another curriculum? Okay, so I kind of overshot my next slide here, and that's okay. So let's say if students are reading and writing, let's say if they're learning how the letter M, and this is the letter M, what you can do is select those individual letters, and then select it, and then form your own. If that isn't the case, we also use an embedded suggested scope and sequence based off of when to introduce certain letters. And they are grouped by common letter stroke. So here's like the L, I, and T, straight lines, O, E, and A. They have a similarity for a backward curve letter, etc. So are students currently learning letters from another curriculum? If it's yes, hey, it's all good. We have the adaptable sequence. You can pick and choose your own individual letters. If they are not learning from another curriculum and you're like, hey, I'm just doing handwriting, hey, then you could use this suggested scope and sequence. So what you can do is kind of toggle back and forth between an alphabetic or a systematic scope and sequence. So I'm going to go ahead and click on our website here. I'm going to click on the Lifter tool, and then basically you can click through whether you're using A systematic scope and sequence, this is the one that we would suggest if you're just working on handwriting, or you could just pick alphabetic and then select individual letters based off of whatever curriculum you're using. And then you click on See Materials, and then they would have all the downloads right over here. Okay, consideration number 2. Are students learning lowercase and or uppercase? So this could be kind of a hot take. And that's okay. So one of the things that we've kind of really thought through and try to pull from research is trying to think through how can we make this an easier on-ramp for students to learn alphabetic letters, particularly when the uppercase version of some letters look very different than the lowercase. So in this case, the dreaded BD reversal. The D on this, the lowercase, faces the left, right? The uppercase D actually faces the right. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why we kind of see a BD reversal. What we are going to suggest, and this is where the hot take comes in, is that perhaps the preferable method would be to try to teach as many lowercase letters as possible first before you start to introduce uppercase letters. Why is that? Well, for one, lowercase letters make up the vast majority of letters students will write. So that's kind of the full stop. So uppercase letters are used for proper nouns, the start of a sentence. Those are very important. We want students to learn uppercase letters, but it's really just the one letter. The vast majority of the rest of the letters are going to be lowercase, so that's one. 2, when we're thinking about the reading-writing connection, the vast majority of letters students will need to learn how to read will also be lowercase. Again, because when students are reading, the only uppercase letters they're going to encounter would be at the beginning of a sentence or in front of a proper noun. Again, very important students learn uppercase letters. I'm not trying to say don't teach those. But when we're thinking about the initial introduction, I would suggest that perhaps sticking with as many lowercase letters as possible for that initial introduction, perhaps the easier, more efficient time students will have on learning these important aspects of early literacy. And then so you can toggle through lower and uppercase here. So we have materials for both. And then there are 3 complementary activities in the Literacy Lifter tool. So we have 3 sheets, student materials. They're called All Cues, Cover, Copy, Compare, and Alphabet Sequence. We also have additional teacher materials that can be used. We have instructional scripts, fidelity steps. So if we were to, let's say, go back over here, we have an e-learning module that unpacks what we're talking about today in more detail. But let's say if you click on Lifter in your classroom, right here we have suggested instructional scripts. We also have fidelity checklists related to if you wanted to try these out, provide coaching, etc. This is what you can do. Again, so that's Literacy Lifter. You can get to it by going to the Iowa Reading Research Center. Again, this is a free, evidence-based resource that we're able to provide. We're thrilled to provide it. So you won't visit our website and see a random pop-up that says, hey, Jane, what's your credit card number? We're not interested in that at all. Just visit our website and then let us know any feedback. We love hearing from teachers. So you can also access teacher materials in Spanish as well. So if you go to the Lifter tool, let's see. I apologize. I don't mean to give anybody motion sickness at all. Oh, I can't toggle that. That's okay. I'll get it. But okay, right here. So English, Spanish. So we also have different instructional scripts in Spanish as well. It does teach English pronunciation and the English alphabet, but we are very interested in getting these in the hands of multilingual educators and then also multilingual caregivers as well. Okay, the final section that I'm going to talk at, I promise, and then I will be quiet, and then I'll pass the mic over to my colleague, Dr. Keller Young, is using Literacy Lifter instructional activities. Okay, so hopefully past at least, 20 minutes, I've been able to kind of convince you that, okay, handwriting skills seem to be important for overall reading and writing development. Okay, these are the 3 evidence-based practices related to handwriting instruction. Visual cues, cover, copy, compare, or memory retrieval, pulling from memory what each individual letter looks like, and then also explicit instruction. Then I started talking about, okay, here are some different things that we have on our website. Now, I'd actually strongly encourage you, if you haven't already, let's go ahead and try some of these things out. So here's the first instructional activity, and this would be all cues. So what this will look like is, let me go ahead and pick the letter R. I'm I'm going to click that. I'm like, oh, let me go back to English real quick. I just can't read Spanish that well. So here's the letter R. I'm going to click See Materials, and then I'm going to click this drop down. What you're going to have is over here, you're going to have a video model. And we are so thrilled to work with some incredibly talented University of Iowa students here. And a whole team of graphic designers that have designed these video models on what these letters can look like. We also went through some usability testing and development for this. So this is meant for teachers to be able to project onto their smart board, onto their whiteboard, play it, and then there's space here to where they can write right on their smart board as the model as well. And then here, if you click over here, here are the downloads. So you have the all cues PDF, cover copy compare, targeted letter sequence. So if you clicked on that all cues, I'll go ahead and bring that up. Let me bring this up real quick. It's usually whenever you never get the pop-up to update your software until you're actually on a presentation. I'm not sure why that's the rule. That's just kind of how the universe works. So I apologize about that. So you have the letter R here, all cues. If you notice something here, is that we have kind of all the cues at the initial block to where there's the dotted lines, there's the arrow showing the direction. We also have the number, and then these are gradually faded away to where then you just have the dotted lines and then finally some blank space. So we have the all cues gradually fades to no visual cues. So we have one of those for each letter. Then we also have, again, that video animation. Then here's the letter L. I apologize. Some of you might find the sound of chalkboards grueling or irritating. I apologize. I find it soothing personally, so I'm not sure how loud the chalkboard sound. Can you hear the chalkboard? You can hear the chalkboard. Yeah, okay. And then so this is meant to be a video model that you can project into your classroom, and then we try to make the connection to the word. I think this one lamp? I can't remember. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah. Then we got a really cool sort of setup here. It looks like a home library situation. Big fan of that. So you got the letter L, and then so we have multiple video models that you can present. In the beginning here, I think I talked over it, but the narrator says the letter name, L, says the letter sound, O, and then it uses it within a word. Next up, we have another instructional activity, which would be cover, copy, compare for each individual letter. And again, this provides students practice on seeing a model of what the letter looks like. There's a fold here to where students create basically their own visual mask, so to speak, to where they see the model on the front half, then they flip it, and now they need to try to recall it from memory and write it, and then they're kind of flipping back and forth. So students use this. So here's the all cues here. The teacher can model again. Oh, hey, remember on Monday we worked on the letter L. The letter L makes a L sound, and write that. And then they can kind of flip back and forth. So let's try writing it with the visual cues. Now let's try to remember it from memory. So we have those sheets for every single letter, both lower and uppercase. We have numerous video models on there as well. And then lastly, we have what's called the alphabet sequence. So another key part of handwriting is for students to develop alphabetic knowledge. The way you can develop alphabetic knowledge is, again, to no surprise, just learning the alphabet. So you can say the alphabet sequence, you can sing the alphabet song. There's some really creative, there's so many creative teachers that I've met. If you ever just, I don't know, can't sleep one night, just go down like an Instagram wormhole for 10 minutes of just search alphabet songs. There's some pretty cool stuff on there. But so you could do the different alphabet songs, and then the letters here, if you can take a look, I will actually go back over here. I'll go to the targeted letter sequence. I'll click on that. Let's see if I get my update. Okay. And then basically the letters that you taught previously now appear in visual cues. And then down here, they're removed. So the idea here is that as students are learning more and more letters, we remove more and more of the actual letters here to where they have to pull them from memory. So the idea being that when they get towards the end of the alphabet, hopefully students will have picked up the majority, if not all, of the letters of the alphabet, and then they would have to pull them from memory. Okay. That's okay. Okay. One of the last things I wanted to talk to you about is if you are interested in using Literacy Lifter, again, I'd encourage you to take a look at the tool. There's an accompanying e-learning module, and there are three additional considerations that are going to be important for when if you go to try to implement this. One is that explicit instruction is meant to be a flexible framework. So just because you'll see in our instructional scripts where it says model and then lead through guided practice, just because we're suggesting that that's where you should be, doesn't mean that you just keep going, even if students are struggling. So what I mean by that is that after you model, if during guided practice students start to make a lot of errors or they have lots of questions, it's completely fine for this to be a flexible framework that you just go back to modeling. That's okay. So we want to empower teachers here to make real-time decisions. Second would be letter reversal. Man, I don't know. That's just, if anybody wants to quote me in a paper or anything, that would be just add my name on there. I don't know. Letter reversals tend to be just a persistent thing across time. I have a third grader at home myself. I have an 8-year-old. And then so we still see that through early elementary. And I think it just has to do with the amount of repetitions needed to learn the B and the D. So, in other words, letter reversals are going to happen. They're just common in early writing. It's just important to sort of recognize and then provide feedback just in just a common, non-threatening manner. Just say, oh, whoops, you know, and then that's it. So students will just need time for that. And then finally, we need to devise a strategy to monitor student writing. So as you're going to see during explicit instruction, when you're leading guided practice, one of the tricky things on doing explicit instruction with writing is that, well, students are looking down and they're writing. So there isn't a clear way for educators to really see what it is the students are writing. So in other words, how do I know my students aren't having difficulty writing the letter F? How do I know my students are legibly forming the letter M? So you need to have some sort of way to monitor. There's no one right answer for this. We've seen teachers adapt these literacy lifter activities to more where initially it'll be like a whiteboard and then they're kind of holding it up. That could be something. It could be that perhaps you just kind of need to know as a teacher that you're going to have to move around a little bit more during the actual initial part of guided practice. Just something would need to happen here to where you would need to have a chance to get your eyeballs on what the students are writing. Okay, so from here, I'm going to stop sharing and I'll turn it over to my wonderful colleague, Dr. Keller Young, to talk to you about assessing handwriting.
Okay, I think hopefully my screen is correct. Awesome. Thank you, Shawn. Wonderful. Yeah. So officially, as of today, just this morning, we have added some additional materials to our Lifter e-learning module and our Lifter tool that Shawn has been demonstrating for you this afternoon. So one of the things that we have heard a lot from teachers who are using Lifter and who are seeing it in their classroom is that they want a way to be able to check in with their students and to monitor that progress. As Shawn was talking about, being able to monitor students as they're learning is really important. And so we're really excited today to be able to share with you our handwriting assessments that we have grounded in research and developed and published for you all to use in your classroom along with our Lifter curriculum. So just as we mentioned, it is the Iowa Reading Research Center. We are always grounded in research here. And some of this does kind of harken back to what Shawn was mentioning about kind of overall importance of handwriting. But really when we're assessing handwriting, these assessments are really targeting handwriting fluency. So as Shawn was describing this idea of becoming a fluent driver, right, where some things become increasingly more automatic as you're kind of using your learner's permit, right? So this assessment is designed to sort of keep an eye on to progress monitor that fluency as it develops with students' handwriting. So when we think about handwriting fluency, we are interested in kind of two components. We're looking at legibility, so being able to produce correctly formed letters that are able to be identified by an external party, right? That you can look at a student's handwriting and be able to identify the letters that they've written. But the other really important piece with fluency that sometimes I think we think about a little bit less is rate. So this is being able to write things down at a particular speed. So students are able to produce those legible letters at a speed where, again, it's really becoming more and more automatic. And so there's less of that working memory, less of that cognitive load of thinking about how do I form the letter C, or what does that look like, and able to move automatically through the letter formation so that way we can see those other benefits of text generation and executive functions. So yeah. So with that in mind, we are proposing and providing some short informal assessments that are really going to provide valuable information about kind of what skills and other areas for handwriting you might want to target with your students. And so our Lifter instructional materials now include two formative handwriting assessment tasks. So we've got the alphabet task and the copy task. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna, did I? Oh, no, we're good. Okay, I thought I skipped a slide, but we'll just keep on going. Okay, so we are going to talk first about the alphabet task. And so the alphabet task is timed. So a timed measure. Because again, we're looking at rate, right? We're looking at speed. So both of our measures are going to be timed. And the alphabet task asks students to be able to write the alphabet from memory. Okay, so we're not providing models with this assessment. We are giving essentially students a blank piece of paper, and we are asking them to write the alphabet in order from memory. And we try to see how many times they're able to complete that in 1 minute. And so what the alphabet task really does is it helps teachers to be able to understand what letters students are able to identify. So again, I work through all of those systems that Shawn described at the beginning of the webinar. So are they able to associate the letter name to its shape? Are they able to form that letter shape correctly? And again, that working memory piece of retrieving that and being able to write that quickly. And so the alphabet task, because we're not providing models, really is a great way to assess kind of several components of handwriting. And when you look at a student's handwriting with that alphabet task, it helps us to really identify which specific letters students might need additional support with. Now, some important considerations with our alphabet task. First, as I mentioned, there's no model provided, so students do need to be asked to do this from memory. But with that being kind of kept in mind, it's really important to keep in mind that our really early writers are maybe our fall kindergarten kiddos. It may be that they don't have those cognitive letters kind of memorized yet. We're not there yet. And so without the model, it's going to be difficult for them to produce every letter of the alphabet at the very beginning of the year in kindergarten. And so it's important to really think about, there are other factors at play with this assessment. And if you're seeing your students maybe struggling a little bit to complete the alphabet task, it may be that there are some other kind of alphabet letter knowledge things that we can also reinforce in the classroom to kind of support that letter knowledge. I will mention that we have some additional details in our administration guide that goes into this in some more detail, as well as within our e-learning module, where we talk a little bit more about ways to provide sort of modified versions of this assessment, where perhaps you time the students for 60 seconds. We see how many letters they get down. Maybe it's 2, maybe it's 3, maybe it's 4. You can mark that on that assessment, and then have the student also complete the rest of the task untimed, so that way you can still kind of get an idea of where the students are with their letter knowledge and formation without that sort of time pressure. That was a lot of information, but it is in the administration guide as well as the e-learning module, if you're interested more for those assessments for our early writers. Okay, and then our second assessment is our copy task. And so the big difference with this one is now we are providing a model. And so we are actually providing a set of text for students to copy. But same general idea here. It's timed. We want to see how much students are able to write in a given amount of time. This one is 90 seconds. And so we ask students to write a sentence as many times as they can in that time allotment. Now, our copy task that we have created for our lifter materials, we actually have two versions. So we have a version that uses everyone's favorite, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. This one is everyone's favorite because it has every letter of the alphabet in it. So it's a really great way to assess students' letter knowledge because it includes every letter, right? But we also provide a version that actually is an editable PDF where you can drop in your own text. So if there's something that you're working on in your curriculum and you want to maybe just focus on certain letters or you have a certain text that you would prefer over the quick brown fox, we offer that option for you as well. We do recommend that you consider kind of both length. So the length of how long that text is that you're asking students to copy in 90 seconds, as well as obviously the more kind of variety in the letters, the better, because that'll help you kind of get a better idea of students' handwriting fluency with particular letters. Okay, now our important note on the copy task is that in this case, we are kind of removing some of those working memory skills that students have to generate the text by giving them something to copy. So if you think back to that simple view of writing triangle that we looked at earlier, now we're taking some of the kind of transcription constraints away because we're giving students letters that they can use as a model to form their own, right? So this helps kind of us really look more specifically at rate as opposed to maybe the letter formation, since they have that model to work from. All right. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how to score these. So there is more information in the administration guides on kind of how to give these assessments. There's a script. And actually, I think we've got plenty of time this afternoon, so we can pull those up in just a second, our administration guides, but got a lot of details on how to administer the assessment to the students. But for now, we're going to really focus on how to score them. So what do we do with the information once we've given the assessment to the students? So two things we're going to focus on. We are going to talk about calculating a rate score, and then thinking a little bit about how we sort of assess overall legibility. So when we think about a rate score, we actually do have some norms that we can kind of operate from. So these are sort of research-based average letters per minute per grade level that we see students produce. Now, these are averages, right? But they can be helpful in interpreting your students' rate scores because without something like this, you could look at it and say, okay, is a rate of 12, what does that mean? Is my student on track? Is that something we need to, is it an area for concern? So having these norms, although they are averages, right? So this is a bit more, you can interpret as you need to here. We do need to have something to sort of keep an eye on tracking progress for our students. So these are available here. Now these norms were built from the copy task. So another kind of important thing to keep in mind with that. All right. And then when we think a little bit about overall legibility, legibility can be kind of a tricky thing, right? Legibility is sort of inherently subjective. It's whoever's reading it, it is the person who ultimately kind of decides what's legible and what is not. And so we have kind of we're providing sort of guidelines in terms of thinking about legibility overall. And so this means thinking about, as the scorer, are you able to identify the letter kind of in isolation? So we've got a couple things to think about when we think about legibility. So one is size. And we've got some student handwriting samples. We've been able to work with some kiddos who have done our handwriting assessments, and so happy to get to share those with you. But one would be size. So here in this example, we see that this student is doing an alphabet task with capital letters, but those capital letters are actually just barely touching the midline, whereas we know our capital letter needs to fill the whole space here, right? So this is a student who is writing pretty small, and so we may want to be able to provide feedback to that student on kind of their overall letter size. Another thing to think about when we think about legibility is shape and direction, and this is where I think legibility really kind of becomes really critical, because here, as you can see, we look at this example, this word is supposed to be jumps, but because of the direction of the P here, now it's like jump, but with a Q in the middle. So thinking about shape and direction is really critical when we think about legibility. And then also spacing. So the spaces between the letters that students are producing. So the copy task is really helpful in looking at this because we're having students write words, right? So in this example, this student was writing quick brown. They skipped the B in this instance, that's okay. But quick brown, but as you can see, judging by the spacing, it kind of looks like quick brown is all one word here. So spacing is another thing that's really, really kind of important to be looking for when we're looking at these handwriting assessments. Um, we also provide some suggested scoring annotations. And so this can be really helpful if you have given this handwriting assessment to maybe your whole class and you're scoring a stack of student copy tasks and you want to make sure that you're keeping consistent scoring across your students. So we have these kind of suggested annotations. They're just suggestions, but hopefully they're helpful for you as you are trying to kind of look at student data both at the individual level and the classroom level. So we have things like, okay, if a student skips an error, so here would, or skips a letter, excuse me. So here's an example where we see the student would have skipped the letter C, so we would count that as an error. An inserted letter, so if we have a letter that's added additionally, we would count that as an error. Illegible letters, again, legibility can be a little bit tricky. So again, we recommend considering if that letter could be identified on its own in isolation. So outside of the alphabet or outside of the word jumps, does that look like the letter P, right? And then also letters that are written out of order. So these would be things that we would recommend counting as errors and ways that you could annotate that on the student's handwriting assessment. And then the last thing that we'll talk about here, and then we can take some time to kind of jump into the administration guides, is thinking a little bit about what happens next, right? So it's really important. We know giving students assessments and collecting that assessment data is really critical, but even more critical than that is what happens next? What do we do after we have the data? And so we've provided in our e-learning just some examples of how you might take some of that student data, some things you might be seeing in the student samples and ways you could support those students further. So for example, if we have a sample who the student is perhaps struggling a little bit with a specific letter. I know one of the samples we've been practicing with, we had the student who did the J was consistently kind of facing the wrong direction. And so that's a really key, clear indicator that, okay, we need to go back to explicit instruction with this letter J. We need to go back to that modeling and following those visual cues, right? Going back to the all cues sheet and really kind of going back to square one to help support that student in a specific letter. If we have a student who is struggling with that alphabet task, as we mentioned, we have some modifications here to think about administering that assessment untimed. But it also may be that there needs to be some more explicit instruction with letter names. So maybe taking the transcription away for a little while and really focusing on student identification of letters and practicing those letter names, and then adding that transcription back in and assessing again pretty soon, but being able to sort of keep track of working on the letter identification as well. We also have those alphabet task worksheets that are really helpful for that since they have the letters embedded within the alphabet. We might suggest additional repeated practice if we see a student who has maybe legibility concerns related to some of those reversals or et cetera that we've talked about before. And then if you have a student who maybe they just didn't write very much in the 60 or the 90 seconds. And so it kind of feels like you don't have enough information to be able to figure out what letters the students might need additional support with, then we would recommend giving those assessments for either a longer duration of time or perhaps administering it untimed. So again, you can start to kind of have some data on the specific letters that students might need support with. Okay, we're gonna hold off on that for just a second more. And I think I saw some things in the chat. Shawn, did you put the assess tool in the chat?
That's correct. So if
Awesome.
anybody, if you were to take a look at the chat and you clicked on the lifter URL that ended with a /resource, that will bring you up to where you can click on the handwriting assessments, which is in the bottom right corner in yellow. And then that will open up. You can click on individual administration directions for each.
Wonderful. I'm going to open it up as well, but I know it's kind of annoying when you're trying to do your own thing on your own screen and then somebody starts screen sharing and like it messes you up. So I'm going to give just a second. Um, so that's that URL that ends in resource. And it looks like this. So right here in yellow are our handwriting assessments. And so we have both that alphabet task and that copy task. And so here you can see we have the overall administration guide. So that's really some details on what you'll need to give the assessment and the procedures. So we have a script here that you can follow just to kind of help make sure that the students, everybody's on the same page. We sort of standardize that assessment. We also have some optional modeling for you. In case, especially again, if this is like the first time you're giving this assessment, we want to show the students what we're going to be asking them to do, as we know. So we've got that in here as well. And as we mentioned, our alphabet task is 60 seconds. And then we've got that scoring guideline here, as well as those untimed task directions, if that's something that your students need. How to calculate that correct letters form per minute. So looking at the total number of errors, subtracting that from the total number of letters the student has written. And so this is what the student sheet looks like. And down here at the bottom, again, a space to calculate that rate score. And then a space to also leave some notes to yourself, again, more on kind of overall legibility. So maybe we write here, size is, something we want to think about, like the student, the size within the lines, or perhaps specific letters we want to focus on with the student. So a way to just leave some notes kind of to yourself on things you'd like to continue to support the student with. We also offer a wide lines version as well. And then our copy task, very similar. So similar kind of design here. But again, the copy task is 90 seconds. So we provide the norms here, those average correct letters formed per minute as a reference. And then here we would do total letters written minus number of errors, and then we would divide by 1.5 since this is a 90-second assessment to get us to that correct letters formed per minute. Wide lines, as well as that editable PDF. So that is all from me. I'm going to throw this up here. I know we have, hopefully, we have some people from the Baker Teacher Leadership Center with us this afternoon. Thank you for joining us. This is a way to record your attendance. And then we'll leave this up for a second. And then, Shawn, I think I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you, Keller. We also had quite a few question and answers submitted. We have a reference section. Keller, if you don't mind leaving up this wonderful student working with her pencil here, that's also our contact information. If you don't mind, I'll take a couple minutes. If you have any questions, drop it in the Q&A, and then I'll try to get to as many as we can. And then, Keller, I might bug you here to help me with some of these responses, or feel free to jump in as you see fit. Some of, I guess, the quicker answers would be, one, will the slides be available? Yes, they will be available. Thanks to Keller and her team. Special shout out to Dr. Kim McFadden, who's a postdoctoral research scholar who was instrumental in helping us release this information. Also, special shout out to everybody from IRRC, Iowa Reading Research Centers on the call. I got Taylor Miller, Olivia Tonelli, Nikki Bodie. I apologize if I'm missing somebody else here, but it's a great. I think I saw Rose, or one of our wonderful colleagues from over in Utah too. Shout out to Rose. Okay, let me get back on track. I apologize. So yes, the slides will be available. We are publishing what we're calling a professional development toolkit, and as a part of that toolkit, all the slides you see today will be yours. So you'll be able to download all those. Just visit Lifter website once again. We're anticipating, Keller, is it right? We're thinking maybe later on in the week that those will be released. Is that right?
Yes, by the end of the week.
Wonderful. So please stop back early and often. Second thing would be We've got a question on love to see the research. I love that question. So, in addition to this slide deck, we'll have the reference list on everything that we pulled. The e-learning module also has a reference list there where hey, I used to be a teacher. I'm a big fan of showing your work. So, where you can check out our work. Also, Dr. Keller Young and Dr. Kimberly McFadden are leading primary data collection on, we're testing the effects of this in different elementary schools. So, we're excited to see what comes with that. Another question that we had are what modifications, if any, would you provide for students with dysgraphia? Wonderful question. Specific to the assessment, you might want to consider using the copy task first. And I say that because the copy task has sample modeled letters for the student to copy, where the alphabet task would purely rely on student memory with our experience with those letters. So that could be an effective accommodation. Two is also thinking about the time of administration. So a copy task, typically 90 seconds. Alphabet task 60 seconds, 90 seconds. You can also do an untimed one as well. So you'll see that on the administration directions as well. Did I about sum that up, Keller?
Yep, I think that was
Okay,
perfect.
cool. Let's see. How to address older students who are still struggling with recall alphabetic order. Great question by Kathy. Yeah, I'm sorry you're experiencing that, Kathy. I've run across that myself. I think if you're in education at all, chances are you will run into that as well. There could be a number of different factors going on here. It's kind of hard to say, but just kind of speaking as from my armchair, as it were, is that perhaps a good way of trying to figure out a plan of support is to quickly administer one of the alphabet tasks that Dr. Young just went through. Gives you a sense on what the scope of the potential support need would be. If the student is missing numerous letters in their alphabetic knowledge, then you probably would need to go back to explicit instruction related to specific letters of the alphabet, perhaps the entire sequence. If there are certain sections that they struggle with, that's not that uncommon. I've worked with middle and high schoolers. One of my clearest memories is a student that when it came to LMNOP, would just jot down kind of this squiggle line. And then when I said, what letter is that? They go, LMNOP. So they just kind of knew the song, but they didn't really know the formation. That might be more targeted support. So hopefully that at least that kind of small response can help somewhat. Do you suggest using lowercase letters with the letter writing assessment? Great question. We would recommend using lowercase. So again, we would recommend using lowercase. You can use uppercase, but again, we're falling back on the idea that the vast majority of letters students write will be lowercase. The vast majority of letters students read will be lowercase. The norms that you see that are a part of the administration directions, also the slide deck, would be lowercase administration as well. Let's see. Great things. Here's another thing. How do you suggest scoring an alternative style, or perhaps a different font? So, for instance, I think we might have displayed something where it was like the italicized A to where the A is going in the opposite direction to where a regular A would perhaps be going another. At least I think the short answer to that would be that whatever you decide, keep your scoring consistent on what you think a legible letter A would look like, for instance, legible letter E. We are in the middle of, we're towards the end, actually. We aren't in the middle anymore. We're towards the end of a systematic review that we're doing on cursive handwriting. And then so we have been thinking about fonts and styles, etc. At least from what we can tell or we're aware of, we haven't found really anything on the benefits or drawbacks of different types of styles or fonts when it's related to handwriting. So I think what that means is I wouldn't focus too much on that when you're thinking about the time resources that you have for handwriting instruction. I don't think there's going to be a big bang for the buck or a big loss by focusing in on different types of ways of writing it. I think it's just whatever it is, you want it to be legible so where people can kind of tell what it is. Am I preaching in the choir there, Keller, or do you have something to add or something different?
I think you're doing great. No,
Okay, nice.
thank
Okay, I
you.
appreciate the positive reinforcement. I like this.
Always.
Um, let's see. Okay, what do you do with students that do not use the lines? Oh yeah, that's a great question. So, at least for what you're going to see on our website, is we give practical guidance on legibility. And I think one of the things to consider there is legibility can technically be outside the lines. And so that can be a whole other issue. What I will say is this is that there are certainly different kind of lower intensity or low effort interventions that you could do when it comes to lines. I've seen some teachers do things like highlight the upper and lower lines as visual cues. I've seen even some teachers the night before get Elmer's glue and glue like a strip on the upper and bottom line so it creates like a physical bump there. We don't have a whole lot of research to fall back on what's like the specific high leverage thing you can try there. But what I will say is that that is certainly can be a focal area for instruction. So in addition to perhaps trying the visual cues or perhaps the physical tactile cues with the raised lines, just simply providing students instruction and also feedback on staying within the lines can help. And I apologize. Looks like we're coming in with quite a few questions, and which I really like. Just in kind of, I know we're coming short on time, so I can answer just one or two more. What's the target age group or grade level for these instruction materials? Great question. We tried to take a lens on a cross grade level lens to where we try to focus in on perhaps age appropriate things that an upper elementary kiddo wouldn't say, oh, this is babyish. So we do hope it has some cross age appeal, but the research that we based it on would be early elementary. So largely K through 2, K through 3. There has been some studies that have used similar approach with older students, but just have to, I think kind of a one size might not fit all there. Is each letter activity intended to be taught one per day or multiple per day? Great question. We are starting an efficacy trial for this, so we are interested in finding that out. What we did base the activities on would be prior research that suggests that 2 to 3 days per week, 15 minutes each lesson. So let's say Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 15 minutes each can result in a measurable improvement of handwriting and then also some related reading outcomes. We'd have to, I think that's sort of sticking with that. I think one of the things that it starts to become tricky for the intended amount per day is just how different students' handwriting speeds can be. You certainly don't want to just say we're going to do the sheet and then it takes 30 minutes for one sheet. I think that would be too long. And then from there, I apologize. I think we're running out of time. I will, if there's some way, the people I work with saw me struggle through Zoom earlier today. So if there's a way for me to download these comments, I will figure out how to do that. Okay, people are shaking their head yes. And then we can follow up with certain answers. And then maybe it'll inform different videos or blogs that we post on our website as well. Let's see, Keller, is there anything that I need to do to sort of wrap up here?
I think we are great. Again, if
Okay.
anybody is from the Baker Teacher Leader Center and needs that QR code again, maybe just hang out for just a second. We can get that back up for you. But otherwise, we just thank you all so much for your time this afternoon. Um,
Okay, thanks everybody. Really appreciate y'all's time.